Various things concerning the spiritual world. Various things concerning those things which are in the spiritual world, from which some things have been quoted in the continuation concerning the spiritual world. To be observed. Leibniz and Wolff. I spoke with John C. Wolff and his preceptor Leibniz concerning the simple substance and pre-established harmony. Concerning the simple substance, Leibniz said that his opinion concerning the monad was never like that of Wolff concerning the simple substance. He said that he indeed acknowledged monads as unities, but that there were in them simpler and purer substances by which the monad was formed, from which changes of state existed therein, since if there were nothing therein it would be nothing, in which there cannot be any change of state, for a vacuum admits of no change. Leibniz therefore wondered that Wolff held that his monad, which he calls a simple substance, was created out of nothing, and that when divided it falls into nothing, and yet he had attributed changes of state to it, and also that he had called some existences simple substances, and which are in nature, which anyone can see are aggregations of substances, like the parts of the air and ether, the elements of metals, and also souls. Wolff said that he wished by his definitions of his simple substances to captivate the minds of theologians, who want it to be believed that all things have been created by God out of nothing, immediately, at that time not knowing that his followers, by confirming these principles in themselves, would close in themselves the ways to angelic wisdom, which nevertheless are founded on natural truths. Concerning pre-established harmony, Leibniz said he had considered and deduced it from this, that thought acts as one with man's speech, countenance, and action. And at that time he had not thought of interior thought, from which many men do not speak nor act, and which, with many combats with the exterior, and still less did he think of spiritual thought, into which man does not come until after death, then that he had considered nothing else in the world but thought, which at that time he acknowledged in place of the soul, and he did not consider affection at the same time, from which, and according to which he thinks. Therefore now, after he has been instructed by angels, he confesses that he erred, and he knows that the case is altogether otherwise. I spoke with Newton concerning a vacuum, and concerning colors. Concerning a vacuum, he said that in the world he had believed in the existence of a vacuum, but when the angels perceived that he had an idea of a vacuum, as an idea of nothing, they turned themselves away, saying that they cannot bear the idea of nothing, since when there is an idea of nothing, the idea of the essence of things perishes. And when the idea of the essence of things perishes, the idea of thought, understanding, affection, love, and of will with men and angels perishes, which things are not given in nothing. They asked him whether he believed that the divine, whence is all angelic wisdom, and all intelligence to men in both worlds, the spiritual and the natural, is a vacuum, and thus that any divine operation inflows through a vacuum into their vacuum, and can present itself to perception. At that question he was disturbed. He replied that it cannot through an absolute vacuum, which is nothing, but through an apparent vacuum, because the divine is the esse itself of wisdom, and the love with the angels in heaven, and with men in the world, and it fills all things. Also, esse itself and nothing are so contrary to each other, that if one be admitted, the other cannot. Therefore the angels entreated that he and all those who cherished the idea of a vacuum as of nothing would desist from it, that they might be together, knowing that nothing of their life can ever be given in nothing, but in those things which are, and which are or exist from the esse. They added that not anything can be said of a vacuum which is nothing, which has relation to acting, reacting, receiving, or attracting, thus to the life of their wisdom and love, in which there are so many infinite affections with their variations, perceptions, and sensations, for nothing is nothing, and of nothing we cannot predicate something. When he had heard these things, Newton said that before this he had desisted from that idea, and he would desist from it hereafter, knowing that he is now in the spiritual world, in which nevertheless, according to his former idea, would have been his vacuum, and that even now he is a man, and therein he thinks, feels, acts, yea, breathes, and this could not take place in a vacuum, which is nothing, but in something which is, and from esse exists and subsists, and that an interstitial nothing is impossible, because that would be destructive of something, that is, of essences and substances which are something. For something and nothing are altogether opposites. Even so that he was horrified at the idea of nothing, and would beware of it lest his mind fall into a swoon. Concerning colours, he said that in the world he had believed that they originated from the substances, as it were, of different coloured materials, continually flowing forth from the solar ocean, and adding themselves continually to like things and objects in the world, likewise when they pass through pellucid objects, following then the ways of light, according to its diffractions and refractions, and proceeding as like to like, thus red to red, blue to blue, yellow to yellow, and so on, as in prisms, crystalline globes, and vapours whence come rainbows. But the angels did not acknowledge this cause of colours, saying that there are colours in the spiritual world, as well as in the natural world, and in the spiritual world they are vivid, splendid, and variegated more than in the natural world, and that they know that there are variegations of their light corresponding to their love or good, and to their wisdom or truth, and that the sun from which their light proceeds is the Lord himself, whose divine love presents around him the appearance of a sun, and the divine wisdom therefrom the appearance of light, and from that sun, which, as was said, is pure love, no such substances or matters flow forth, but that pure light presents to view variegations of colours in objects, according to the reception of wisdom by the angels, the colour red, according as their wisdom is derived from good, and the colour bright white, according as their wisdom is derived from truth, and the rest, as they partake of the defect and absence of them, which there correspond to shade in the world. Moreover, the angels, by their spiritual ideas, by which they are able to present and bring forth the causes of things to the life, and to full consent, demonstrated that colours are nothing else than variegations of flamy light and bright white light in objects according to their forms, and that colours are not materials, so neither is light, because they correspond to the love and wisdom of the angels, from whom they proceed by divine operation, and their love and wisdom are not material but spiritual. Neither are heat and light in the world material but natural, and they inflow into matters, and they modify themselves in them according to the forms of the parts. Therefore neither are colours material, as they would be if they existed from different coloured atoms. At length, from some indignation, they said, "Who cannot see a paradox in the Newtonian cause? Yea, what is absurd?" And they departed, saying they would return, if he would discern spiritually or even naturally concerning colours, and not so materially and sensually. Then some spirits approached and said to him, "We entreat you to think of colours not as originating from some small prism or from some wall, but from the green colour of all the woods and grassy fields of the whole world in which you were. Can you conceive of a continuous efflux from the sun of a green colour alone, and at the same time an influx and a continual restoration, likewise of a continual influx of grey or stone colour into the mountains of the whole earth, and so on? Can you then conceive of a continuous ocean of green alone, and of rock colour alone? Tell us where they go, where they subsist. Do they proceed into the universe, or do they fall downwards somewhere, or ascend upwards? From these things, perchance, new earths exist, for they must be in great abundance, because they are material." After he thought of this thing more deeply, he said, Now I know that colors are modifications of light in objects, in the forms of which they make general planes, upon which the light is variegated according to the forms of the parts, whence are colors. These are the words of Newton himself, which he wishes me to communicate. London. London, in the spiritual world, appears like the London in the natural world, as to its streets and quarters, but it is dissimilar as to houses and habitations. This difference is not apparent, because everyone there dwells in a quarter, and in a house corresponding with his affection and thought thence derived. In the middle of the city is situated the Royal Exchange. To the right of it dwells the Moderator, and round about it his officers. The middle street of it answers to Holborn, the east is in the front, toward the back even to Wapping is the west. The south is at the right of that street, and the north is on its left. In the eastern quarter, which is of considerable length, reaching far beyond the city, dwell the best of them, where they all worship the Lord. Those who are distinguished for intelligence dwell in the southern quarter, which extends almost to Islington, where there is also an assembly. They who dwell there are also prudent in speaking and writing. Towards the north, those dwell who are illiterate, and who are in the greatest degree of liberty of speech, which they love. In the west are those who are in the obscure affection of good. Those who are there are fearful of manifesting their thoughts. In the southern region, answering to Moorfields and round about it, is a promiscuous multitude. Thither from the city are sent away all those who incline to evils, wherefore the multitude there is cast out by turns, and thus continually. Through this way the city is continually purified, and those who are led away therefrom appear no more. Sometimes they see about the middle of the city a certain malicious person, sitting on a seat in a pulpit, and the inhabitants are called together and ordered to go thither to him. They who approach and hearken are led to the place of exit, where there are promiscuous crowds, and as was said, they are sent out through the ways there. Every society is purified, this in the manner of purifying them there. Their houses, clothing, and food are similar to those used in the world. I asked about wine, strong drink, beer, chocolate, tea, and the like, and was told that they had similar things. I asked also about the liquor called punch. They said that they also have that liquor, but it is given only to those who are sincere and at the same time industrious. They do not tolerate in the city any ruler who directs or dictates to them what they must do, for they wish to be in full liberty. The English live together, and do not travel about in other regions, for they are of a different genius and disposition from others, and their disposition is such that they do not admit others into intimacy with them. It was also shown to them that they speak, write, and think spiritually, and that they themselves do not know otherwise than that they do all things naturally, from which they were instructed by me that there is no ratio between the spiritual and the natural. Thus there is no conjunction through what is continuous, but through what is discrete, that is, by correspondences, which conjunction makes a likeness as if they are one. They were a little envious that they had not discovered this. Moreover, in each degree there is an internal and an external, and the external corresponds to the internal, and the externals are appearances, like material things, although they are not material. It was shown to them also by ascent to the third heaven that there is a similar difference between the celestial and the spiritual, as there is between the spiritual and the natural, so that there is no ratio between them. That is, the natural cannot become spiritual by any continuous purification, nor can the spiritual become celestial, thus not by any approximation, but it is like the difference between cause and effect, or between the soul and the body. I afterwards spoke with them concerning priests, and I saw that there is one kind of priests that supposes they are more erudite and learned than others. These all dwell in the west, and when they come to preach, they go forth from the west a little to the north, and so towards the middle of the city to the temples. This is a sign that they go in the way of taciturnity and ignorance, for in the west those dwell who are taciturn, and there near to the north those who are ignorant of truth. They appear to themselves to preach learnedly and with erudition, because they preach about the divine operation into the actions of men, when they are justified. Thus concerning the effort, which is the fourth degree of justification, which inflows into the act with men, they themselves being ignorant of it, and that the voluntary of man is not present, since that is evil. The hearers complained of them that they cannot understand them, whether they wish them to act of themselves or not, because they can take both senses from their ambiguous teachings. It was perceived that they wish such discourses to sound learned before preachers and bishops, and that they do not dare to preach otherwise before them. But there are also preachers who dwell in the south, who altogether preach that they must shun evils as from themselves, and that they must do goods as from themselves, but that still they must know that they are not from themselves. Thus the citizens love these. They speak in harmony with the prayer before the Holy Supper. In the suburbs, at the left, dwell many of their learned, and with them Newton. They go down thither by a sloping way. In a word, they who teach according to their prayer at the Holy Supper dwell in the south towards the east, and they are loved because they think as they preach. The rest do not, but dispute continually with them, and reply that they cannot do otherwise. I saw them recede to their habitations in the west, which are at the right side there, where there is a place of exit, and some also are led out. It was said of those preachers in the west that they do not care to know evils or sins, because God knows, and not they, nor do they wish to know from affection any other knowledges than what confirm their faith. They despise those who are in the south and east as simple, who, as it were, with their thought are low, and that their thought is not elevated but depressed, when yet it is altogether contrary. I heard a conversation with presbyters in the west which was affected by representatives. On one side the devil with hell was represented, on the other side the Lord with heaven, and then it was said that the devil or hell dwells in the evils with man, and that the Lord with heaven is in the goods with him. Then the Lord through heaven continually drives away the devil with hell, but the man who excuses his evils, and who lives in them, retains with himself the devil with hell. Nor does he permit him to go away, although the Lord drives him away. Also the devil then speaking with him says what need is there to know evils, so as to combat against them, when God does that. And so he confirms man, therefore he is retained, and thus they live together as friends, besides many similar things. Also the devil by that faith confirms them, saying, What need is there of other knowledges than those which belong to that faith? They are of no help. What need is there to know evils? Because man from himself cannot combat against them. What need is there of combats, because man of himself can do nothing? When nevertheless everything of life, everything of reason, and everything of freedom man has from the Lord, and he wills that man should act as of himself, and without man's cooperation as of himself, the evil remains, and the devil with evil, etc. Those priests in the West complained that those who were in faith alone, or in faith separated, disappeared, saying that they do not know where they went. Some said that they saw some in the hells. The Moravians. I do not write of those who are in the world, but of those who are out of the world. I spoke with these, and I heard. 1, they are mere Arians. They deny the divine of the Lord, saying that he has the divine, such as man has. When it was said to them that he was conceived of Jehovah, they come together, nor do they wish easily to admit it, wishing to deny the Scripture lest they should be refuted. But still they say something that the Jews do. Others, when they are convinced, say that he was born that he might be adopted. They confirm themselves by the Lord's word, that in his freedom he was left to suffer the cross, not knowing why this was done. They say that they love him, because he took it upon himself to suffer the cross, and also because it is commanded by the Father, then especially because he is loved by the Father on account of the passion of the cross. 2. They reject the Old Testament as no longer for them but for the Jews. 3. They also despise the Gospels, saying that the Lord is spoken of as a simple man, and thus that there is nothing divine in them. For, concerning faith in him spoken of in the Gospels, they say that he so wished it, and that it ought not speak thus. 5. They acknowledge the epistles of Paul only, and also the historicals of the Word, but they do not believe in the holiness of the Word. 6. They say concerning good works and charity that they ought not to be together with faith, and that they should shudder at doing good works for the sake of heaven, and that in their heaven they would rather adopt the most malevolent than such. In a word, they condemn them to hell. 7. In speaking, they utter the greatest fallacies. They speak with each one according to his heart in religion. They guard lest those mysteries should be disclosed. The rest which are concerning the Holy Supper and baptism, they think and teach violently. They are such things as do not agree with the faith of the Reformed, nor do they admit to the Holy Supper any others than those who receive those 3 mysteries, because they have confirmed them. 8. From these things it is evident that they are among the worst who profess Christianity. 9. They make much of their sensation, but it was shown to them that their sensation is with their spirits, who were enthusiastic spirits from their assembly in the world, who come nearer to them, who think much of their religion and love it, saying that they are more loving and happy than others. These confirm them very greatly. Thence is their sensation. They are held in the lower earth to the left in a society separated from the rest, because they are among themselves, and they are a society of interior friendship, which, if it should be in the neighborhood of others, they would destroy their delights. They recede by turns from that society towards the left, into a desert which is for them alone, where there is no grass, where there are crags and cliffs. The Dutch. How formally and courteously they invite their wives, and bring and lead them to their house, and show how well it is with those who act together in unity in their houses, and also how clean and well furnished their houses are, and on the contrary, how unclean those are where there is the dominion of one over the other. Savory food is also given those who act in unity, and they are taught by these things the quality of their delight, when one is of the other, mutually and reciprocally. Therefore, when they see those things, and apperceive them to be true, they desist from dominion, and then they obtain a habitation nearer to the middle, and are led into a house better furnished. The reason is that there is then conjugal love, which regarded in itself is celestial love itself. The Moravians in London, the Herrenhouters and the Jews. The Moravians dwell in the furthest corner of the place of exit, mostly at the side there, but when they journey into the city, as to their sanctuary, they appear to proceed towards the middle, and thence a little to the south, and thus to their corner, which is done because they wish to appear to others as Christians of a similar doctrine. Afterwards, from their corner they go into the west, where the presbyters are, who are in faith alone, concerning whom we have spoken before, and they return thence. From their corner, which is as it were their inn there, they go out by turns, and descend into a vault, which stretches deeply under the west, where the presbyters are of whom we have spoken before, and their hell is there, from which they are no longer let out, except some into deserts. It is not allowed them to dwell near others, nor elsewhere, because they form a society of interior friendship, which takes away the spiritual delight of others. They say to others that they should dwell here and there, even to the middle, but still they dwell at that corner, of which they have an idea as of their inn. They appear in a way towards the middle, because they persuade that they are of the Anglican religion, and speak with the English piously as if they were, and that they differ only as to ceremonials, which are like those of the apostles. When they are asked why their preachers are clothed in blue, they say because that color is loved, nor do they dare to say that they should be clothed like the English preachers in a black gown, because they fear lest their mysteries should be disclosed. They very greatly fear to be sincere, and just on account of religion. They are altogether averse to this, wherefore they are prone to all kinds of evils, taking care only lest they be discovered, because with others this would be hurtful to their religion. Moreover, the Jews do not dwell upon the earth in London, but under the earth there, on the northern side below, where Tower Hill is. They enter there through a dark opening, and the citizens of the city do not know where they dwell. The love of knowing. The love of knowing is the external of the will. The use on account of which it is done is the internal of the will. With infants and boys, the external rules. In process of time, the internal is formed. Then there is formed the love of knowing for the sake of use. These are formed whether they are good or evil. But the love of understanding whether a thing is true or not, and thence the love of being wise, is also the external of the will, originating from the light of heaven and its variegation. This love, because it is the external of the will, can be separated from its internal, and then it is the love of one's own glory, on account of glory and not on account of any use then. Therefore it can be given also with the evil. Or the external of the will in the understanding is the love of truth on account of glory, thus on account of the external. Use of life makes the internal of the will, originating from the Son of Heaven. It, that is the exterior, is as in the time of winter, and like what is foul shining exteriorly. The Jews. The Jews, less than others, know that they are in the spiritual world. They think there of the Messiah as they did in the world, and expect him, and they say that he will come. But when it is said to them that it will be in Bethlehem, and from the house of David, and they are asked, Where is Bethlehem now, and where is the house of David? They do not know how to answer other than that he knows where that city is, and where that family is. Some of them in the other life say that the Messiah is in heaven, and that he will not come to those in the spiritual world before he is born a boy in the world. When they are asked whether they only who are in the world will be led into Canaan, they reply that they will then return into the world, and they will dwell with them in the land of Canaan. When they are asked whether they will then again be born, they say that they will not, but that they will descend to them, believing that thus they will be men like them. When they are asked whether Canaan will be capacious enough for all who have been born from that nation from the time of Abraham, they say that the land of Canaan will then be enlarged. When they are asked how the Messiah, the Son of Jehovah, can dwell with such evil persons, they say that they are not evil. When it is said that Moses in his song said that they were the worst, do they read it and sing it as was commanded by Moses? They reply that Moses was angry when he wrote that, because they departed from him, and therefore they do not read it, but run through it quickly. When it is said to them that their origin is from a Canaanitess, and from whoredom with a daughter-in-law, they then are angry and depart, saying that it is enough that they are from Abraham and Jacob. They say that Moses and David will also return and go with the Messiah, one at his right and the other at his left. They narrate many fabulous things concerning the Messiah, how he will introduce them into the land of Canaan, and how rich Christians will follow them freely if they give them their money. Nevertheless, many of them who know that Christ, who is the Messiah, rules all things in the heavens, say that they wish to receive this but cannot. They hear it from Moses, who sometimes appears above with a rod, and teaches this, and when they hear, they go away in various directions. They said to me, Why did he suffer the cross? I replied, Because he was the greatest prophet, and therefore he carried the iniquities of the people, like the prophet who lay on his right side and on the left, and ate bread made of barley and filth, of whom it is said that he bore their iniquities. Likewise other prophets, one who took a harlot to wife, who put on ashes, who went barefoot, who thus bore their iniquities, in like manner it is said of the Messiah. When they heard this, they said that they would go off among themselves and consult together. They who have not become foul from filthy avarice, and who have not become devils from hatred, fraud, and revenge, are tolerated below the heavens where their habitations are, because they regard the word as holy, and they who suffer themselves to be instructed concerning the Lord are transferred to societies where they are instructed, and are sent back to those who have not yet received. Their business is dealing in diamonds and precious stones as in the world. They procure them for themselves from heaven. They learn that they have that business because they regard the word as holy, because the sense of the letter corresponds to those stones and signifies them. Therefore, the more holy they regard the word, the better do they succeed there in that business. The Moravians. They said that they were the remains of the apostolic church, and therefore they call each other brothers. Therefore, some from their society, who were below the earth, were sent to those who had been converted in the time of Paul and the apostles, and were of the church. First they came to the church, which was with the Colossian nations, and they spoke with them at first as if they were of such a church. But they were questioned concerning the Lord. They said that they pray to the Father for the sake of the Son, and that they do not go to the Son. They answered that they go to the Lord because he said that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one cometh to the Father except through him. Then that one must have faith in him, and that they cannot go to the Father immediately. Thus it is that they ascend above what is permitted. They were questioned about charity. They said that they have charity among themselves, and therefore they call each other brethren. But they said that this is friendship, and not charity, and they asked whether they do not know that charity is to do good, and that this is primary, and that they should call good, brother, and truth, companion. But when they said that to do good effects nothing for salvation, thus charity effects nothing, but faith alone, and that faith is that the Lord was sent by the Father that he might take away the damnation of the law by the passion of the cross, it was seen that they are no longer under any law. Then, being indignant, they drove them away, calling them fanatics, and not apostolical. They who were of the Thessalonian church said the same of them, but these only inspected them from above, and they recognized similar things with them, and being indignant, they turned themselves away, as from those who are to be altogether guarded against. Afterwards they came to a certain apostolic church, which was in Galilee not far from Tyre. There they did the same, asserting that they were in a like doctrine with them. But they were questioned concerning the word. They said that they had the epistles of Paul, in which is their doctrine itself, and that he spoke from the Holy Spirit. They were asked what they believed concerning the Gospels. They answered that the Lord there spoke from himself. They were asked whether he spoke from the Father, thus from the divine, or from the Holy Spirit. They said that he spoke from himself. They asked how. They replied simply as a man, and that he did not speak from the Father nor from the divine, because he wished them to have faith in him, and wished to be equal to the Father. They asked whether he was conceived from the Father. They said that they would think of this as they wished. They did not dare to say that they thought as the Jews did, nor did they dare to say that they hold in low estimation what he spake. They were questioned about the Old Testament, whether it is holy. They said that the Jews regard it as holy because it was given through them, but that they do not regard it as holy, and that it is evil to believe that it is holy by itself. They were asked whether they know that there are many things therein concerning the coming of the Lord. They said that it is about the coming of the Messiah, and that by the Messiah is meant God the Father and not the Lord, denying that the Father was in the Lord according to his word. When passages were quoted therefrom concerning the Lord, they turned themselves away, and said that they understand it differently from them. In a word, they reject the word of the Old Testament as not holy, and as having nothing there concerning the Lord. Some things which they answered, because they hurt the ears, I pass by. Afterward they heard concerning their faith, and they said that it does not at all agree with their faith, and that it is nothing. And being indignant that they had said that they were of their church, they commanded them to depart, and otherwise they would drive them away, because they see that they are not Christians at all, calling them antichrists. Zinzendorf heard all those things which they spoke with this and the former apostolic church, and he grieved, saying, I know not whence such things have come to pass since I was in the world. And seeing that there was nothing for them but hell, he grieved. They said they take something from the Gospels, the prophecies, and the histories of the Old Testament in their preaching, chiefly things which confirm their dogmas, something also on account of the rest of Christians, lest they should give offense, and that they may allure to their side. It was asked whence they could become such in the world, when yet they pray to the Father, and are religious. Answer was made them, because they deny the divine of the Lord, and they were instructed that there is a general efflux from hell, against the divine of the Lord, against charity towards the neighbor, and against the holiness of the word, and that they may know from this whence they have the confirmations against those three things. They said that they would not turn to them because they would thus disturb them, and misfortunes would happen to them. Some hundreds of them came out, and went to a society where charity reigns, and they were in the persuasion that they were living, and those who were in charity were dead. From that persuasion the angels of the Society of Charity appeared before their eyes as blackish, and they themselves in some degree exteriorly as angels. Their persuasion has this in it, that as they draw near, they appear to themselves from their persuasion as if they were living, and the rest before their eyes as if half dead. When they perceive this, they pray to the Lord that the newcomers be removed from them. Therefore those over them are commanded to go away. But as they depart and are at a distance, they appear monstrous, so that they are scarcely men, and that monstrous appearance increases even until their entrance under the earth, which was a cavern. And when they come thither, the monstrosity remains, and appears before their eyes and the eyes of their brethren, and afterwards for a long time they are punished many times, nor do they approach any more to other societies, and by persuasion induce others to such things, and thus allure them to their insane dogma, and believe that they are living, and those who are in charity are unwilling to be continually with them. The punishment continues until they affirm that they will no longer do this, for their greatest desire is to allure and lead over to their side by various cunning ways and arts. They are deceivers. Degrees. There is a natural kingdom, a spiritual kingdom, and a celestial kingdom. In the natural kingdom are men, whilst they live in the world. In the spiritual kingdom are spiritual angels. In the celestial kingdom are celestial angels, for there are these three universals, the natural, the spiritual, and the celestial. In each kingdom there are 2 degrees, in the natural 2, in the spiritual 2, and in the celestial 2. Thus in the 3 kingdoms there are 6 degrees. All these degrees are discrete, or discontinuous, and are called degrees of altitude. Discrete degrees are to each other as thought to speech, or as the affection to gesture, or as the affection of the mind to the countenance, and in the material world as the ether to the air, or as a nerve to the fibers of which it is composed. All compositions in the whole natural world and in the spiritual world are of this character, and they consist either of 2 or 3 degrees of this kind in their order. These degrees are called prior and posterior, higher and lower, interior and exterior, and in general they are as cause and effect, or as a substance and a substantiate, or as the aggregate form from substances, or as a principle and the principiates, or the thing formed from principles. There are also continuous or cohering degrees. Each discrete degree has its continuous degree. The continuous degree of each discrete degree is as light verging to shade, and at length to the obscurity of night, and also as the rational thought which is in light to sensual, and as it were at length to corporeal thought, which is in a dense shade, according as it descends to the body. In such a degree, continually decreasing, is the human mind. In a similar degree, but lower, are man's sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, in like manner his speech and his singing. For man has a tone, like the tone of a lyre and like the sound of a drum. It is also similar with the harmonies and beauties, for they proceed by continuous degrees from the highest harmony and beauty to the least. These degrees are of the cause in itself and of the effect in itself. They are distinguished from the former degrees because these are of the cause and the effect in themselves. Continuous degrees are called degrees of what is purer or grosser. An idea of these degrees can be had chiefly from light and shade, and also from the aerial atmosphere in its lower and higher regions, for in the lower region it is grosser, denser, and more compressed, and in the higher region it is purer, rarer, and more extended. Unless one procures a knowledge of these two kinds of degrees, he cannot have an idea of the interiors and exteriors of man, thus neither of the soul and the body, nor indeed of causes and effects. Nor can he have an idea of the distinction between the heavens, nor of the wisdom of the angels in the heavens, nor can he have any idea of correspondences, of representatives, of influx, of order. Thus he cannot have an idea of those things which are of order, both in the natural world and in the spiritual world, thus scarcely any just idea of anything. Few hitherto have had any other idea of degrees than of continuous degrees, which is, as was said, from what is pure to what is gross, or from greatest to least, from which it follows that only one kind of degrees has been known, and that the natural degree and the spiritual degree are distinguished only as what is pure and gross. In like manner, the difference between the heavens, and also in the wisdom of the angels, whereas the difference is according to discrete degrees, the nature of which we shall presently show from experience. There are therefore, as stated above, 6 discrete degrees, 2 in the natural kingdom, 2 in the spiritual kingdom, and 2 in the celestial kingdom. But these degrees are those in which men and angels are, as to their thoughts, their affections, and their wisdom therefrom. Degrees are as follows. Below these 6 degrees of life, there follow similar degrees, and also material, even to the ultimate, and above those 6 degrees ascend degrees of the infinite, even to the divine itself. For the divine itself cannot flow into any angel or man from itself, but by discrete degrees, for if it flowed in immediately, or by what is continuous, both angel and man, from the ardor of the divine love, and from the light of the divine wisdom, would be entirely consumed. This would be as though the sun of the world from its fire were to flow immediately into the objects of the earth, and not mediately through the atmospheres according to distinct, discrete degrees. There are 3 natural atmospheres arising from the Son of the world, and there are 3 spiritual atmospheres arising from the Son of heaven, which is the Lord. The 3 natural atmospheres arising from the Son of the world are the purer ether, which is universal, from which is all gravitation, the middle ether, which forms the vortex around the planets, in which are the moon and the satellites, from which is magnetism, and the ultimate ether, which is the air. By these 3 atmospheres all the corporeal and material things of the earth are held together, which are so composed as to be applicable to those 3 degrees. The 3 spiritual atmospheres arising from the Son of heaven are those in which are the angels of the 3 heavens. In the 2 higher atmospheres are the angels of the Lord's celestial kingdom. In the 3rd and the 1st, natural, which is pure ether, are the angels of the Lord's spiritual kingdom, and in the atmospheres following those 2, which are in the middle and the ultimate ether, which is the air, are men while they are in the natural world.